Lieutenant Ju Kim stood at the observation deck of the Earth Alliance starship Horizon, staring into the endless void of space. The stars twinkled like distant memories as she sipped her coffee, enjoying the moment of quiet before her shift began. "Lieutenant Kim to the bridge," the ship's AI announced, interrupting her thoughts. "Unidentified object detected in Sector 7. Jiu quickly made her way to the bridge where Captain Doyeon was already examining holographic displays of an unusual object floating through space. "What do we have, Captain?" Jiu asked, taking her position at the sensor station. "Unknown vessel, no matching records in our database." Captain Doyeon gestured toward the screen. "Life support systems appear to be failing. I need you to lead the investigation team." Within an hour, Jiu and her team of 4 approached the alien ship in their shuttle. The vessel was unlike anything in Earth's records, sleek with an iridescent surface that shifted colors as they drew near. "Scans show only one life sign," reported Officer Minho from behind her. "Faint but stable." Jiu nodded. "Let's find a way in." They located what appeared to be an entry port, and after some careful analysis, managed to open it. Inside, the ship's corridors were narrow with unusual geometric patterns etched into walls that seemed to pulse with dim light. "The atmosphere is breathable," Officer Teja confirmed after checking her equipment. "Temperature slightly warmer than Earth standard." They moved carefully through the ship, following the life sign readings until they reached what looked like a control center. In the middle of the room was a transparent pod containing a humanoid figure. Jiu approached cautiously. Inside the pod lay a being with scales covering its body. The scales shimmered with a greenish-gold hue under the pod's light. Its face was surprisingly expressive despite the reptilian features. Closed eyes, a flat nose, and a mouth that seemed capable of human-like expressions. "It's in some kind of stasis," Jiu said, examining the pod's controls. "Life support is failing. We need to get it back to the Horizon." After careful coordination with the ship's medical team, they transported the pod back to the Horizon. Dr. Hana, the ship's chief medical officer, was waiting for them in the medical bay. "Fascinating," Dr. Hana said as she examined the being. "Reptilian features but clearly humanoid structure. I believe we can safely open the stasis pod." Captain Doyeon had joined them by this point. "Do it, but keep security protocols in place." The pod hissed as it opened. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the alien's eyes snapped open, revealing vertical pupils surrounded by amber irises. It sat up quickly, looking around at the humans with obvious alarm. "We mean no harm," Jiu said, raising her hands in a universal peaceful gesture. "Your ship was damaged. We brought you here for safety." The alien tilted its head, studying her. It made a series of clicking sounds followed by what seemed like words, but nothing the universal translator could interpret. Over the next few days, the ship's linguistics team worked with the alien to establish basic communication. They learned that his name was Tarek, and he came from a planet called Viridia. His species called themselves Viridians, and his mission had been scientific exploration when his ship malfunctioned. Jiu was assigned as Tarek's liaison, spending hours each day helping him learn about humans while gathering information about Viridians. The process was filled with misunderstandings that sometimes led to amusing situations. 1 week after his rescue, Jiu was showing Tarek the ship's mess hall. He had been curious about human food and social customs. "This is where we eat together," Jiu explained as they entered the large room filled with tables and crew members enjoying their meals. "Sharing meals is an important social activity for humans." Tarek watched carefully as Jiu selected food items from the dispensers. His own diet had been specially formulated by Dr. Hana to meet his nutritional needs. They sat at an empty table, and Jiu noticed several crew members watching them curiously. "Your species consumes food in groups," Tarek observed, his translator now working reasonably well. "This is similar to Viridians." "Yes, eating together helps us build connections," Jiu replied, eating a spoonful of her rice bowl. Tarek nodded, seemingly deep in thought as he carefully ate his meal. He watched Jiu closely, mimicking her movements with his own utensils. When they finished their main course, Jiu returned to the dispenser and brought back 2 small bowls of fruit pudding. She placed one in front of Tarek. "This is dessert, sweet food we eat after our main meal. Try it. It's good." Tarek sniffed the pudding cautiously before taking a small taste. His eyes widened. "This contains high sugar content," he said. "On Viridia, such resources are highly valued." Jiu smiled, pleased that he seemed to like it. She ate some of her own dessert, then noticed Tarek was watching her spoon with great interest. "Would you like to try mine too? It's a different flavor," she offered casually, scooping up some of her pudding and holding it out to him. The mess hall suddenly went quiet. Tarek froze, his amber eyes growing wider than Jiu had seen before. His scales seemed to shift color slightly, taking on a more pronounced golden hue. "You share your food with me?" Tarek asked slowly, his translator struggling to convey what seemed like intense emotion. "Sure, it's no big deal," Jiu replied, still holding out the spoon. "Friends share food all the time." Tarek's hand trembled slightly as he accepted the spoon. He looked at the offered pudding, as if it were made of precious gems. "On my planet," he said in a voice that had gone unusually formal, "offering personal food is sacred. It is how we propose lifetime bonding." Jiu's smile faltered as she processed his words. "You mean like marriage?" Tarek solemnly took the bite of pudding, then placed his hand over his chest in what appeared to be a ritual gesture. "I accept your proposal, Lieutenant Jiu Kim of Earth. By the laws of Viridia, we are now promised to each other." The mess hall erupted in whispers as Jiu sat frozen, spoon still extended, suddenly understanding she had just accidentally proposed marriage to the first Viridian human beings had ever met. News traveled quickly through the horizon. By morning, everyone had heard that Lieutenant Jiu Kim had accidentally proposed marriage to their alien guest. Some crew members found it amusing, while others worried about the diplomatic implications. Jiu sat in the ship's conference room with Captain Doyen, Dr. Hana, and Dr. Jumno, the ship's xenoanthropologist. Tarek sat across from them, his posture formal but relaxed. "Let me understand this correctly," Captain Doyen said, looking between Tarek and Dr. Jumno. "Sharing food directly is considered a marriage proposal in Viridian culture." Dr. Jumno nodded. "Based on what I've learned from Tarek, Viridians evolved from pack hunters who faced extreme resource scarcity. Sharing food became the ultimate sign of trust and commitment. It is our most sacred bond," Tarek explained. His translator had been improved overnight to better capture nuances. When one offers food from their own portion, they promise to provide for the other even in times of hardship. Jiu felt her face grow warm. "I had no idea. In human culture, sharing food is just friendly. This is why we study alien cultures before making contact," Dr. Juno said gently. "First contact scenarios are full of potential misunderstandings." Captain Dodium leaned forward. "Tarek, can we simply explain this was a cultural misunderstanding?" Tarek's scales shifted to a deeper green. What they had learned indicated distress. "Captain, the food bond is not taken lightly. In our history, wars have been fought over broken bonds." After the meeting, Jiu was assigned to show Tarek more of the ship, hoping to find a diplomatic solution. As they walked through the botany lab, Tarek stayed unusually close to her. "I notice you seem uncomfortable," Tarek said as they examined earth plants growing under artificial light. "Have I caused offense?" Jiu shook her head. "No, I'm just not sure how to handle this situation. On Earth, people usually date for months or years before proposing marriage." Date. Tarek's translator struggled with the concept. "Spend time together to see if they're compatible before making lifetime commitments," Jiu explained. Tarek considered this. "Interesting. Viridians have compatibility assessments performed by family elders. But food sharing only occurs when both parties have already decided. As they continued through the ship, Jiu noticed the crew watching them with curiosity. Some whispered as they passed. When they entered the recreation area, Officer Minho approached with a grin. "So, Lieutenant, should we prepare for a wedding?" he asked teasingly. Before Jiu could respond, Tarek stepped slightly in front of her. "The bonding ceremony requires proper preparation. Lieutenant Kim will inform you when arrangements are needed." Minho's smile faltered as he realized Tarek was serious. He quickly excused himself. "You don't need to protect me," Jiu said when they were alone. Officer Minho was just joking. Tarek tilted his head. "Protection of one's bonded is expected. Is this not valued among humans?" Jiu sighed. "It's complicated. We value independence as well as partnership." Later that day, as they sat in the observation deck watching stars streak by, Jiu tried a different approach. "Tarek, what if someone on Viridia shares food by accident? There must be a way to undo a proposal." Tarek was quiet for a long moment. "There is a dissolution ceremony, but it brings great shame to both families. It suggests poor judgment and instability." He turned to face her directly. "May I ask why humans would share something as precious as food without serious intent?" The question made Jiu pause. She had never considered food sharing as significant. "I guess we're fortunate to have abundant resources. Sharing has different meanings for us. Friendship, hospitality, community." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent announcement. "Lieutenant Kim to the bridge immediately." When they arrived, Captain Do-yeon pointed to the main view screen. 3 ships had appeared, sleek and similar to Tarek's vessel but much larger. "Viridian ships," Tarek confirmed, his scales brightening. "They must have received my distress signal." Communications Officer Sunwoo turned from her station. "They're hailing us, Captain." The screen flickered to show another Viridian, older than Tarek with darker scales and elaborate markings. "I am Elder Nevin of the Viridian Science Council," the alien said through a translator. "We have come for scientific explorer Tarek." Captain Do-yeon stepped forward. "I am Captain Do-yeon of the Earth Alliance. We rescued explorer Tarek when his ship malfunctioned. He is welcome aboard our vessel as our guest." Elder Nevin's vertical pupils narrowed. "Our scans indicate Tarek has entered a bond state. His biochemistry shows the signs." All eyes turned to Tarek, who straightened proudly. "It is true, Elder. I have accepted a food bond with Lieutenant Jiu Kim of Earth." The Elder's reaction was immediate. "This is unprecedented. We must discuss this development. A delegation will board your vessel to verify this bond." After the communication ended, Captain Do-yeon turned to Jiu with concern. "This has become a serious diplomatic situation. Dr. Chunho, what happens if Lieutenant Kim rejects this bond now?" Dr. Chunho looked grave. "Based on what Tarek has shared, it could be seen as a grave insult, not just to Tarek, but to his entire species. In their history, broken bonds have led to blood feuds." Later that evening, Jiu sat alone in her quarters, reviewing Viridian cultural information. A chime at her door interrupted her reading. "Enter," she called. Dr. Hana stepped inside, carrying a data pad. "I've been studying Viridian physiology," she said without preamble. "Their bonding process isn't just cultural, it's biological. Tarek's body chemistry has actually changed since you shared food." "Changed how?" "His brain is producing chemicals similar to human attachment hormones, but much stronger. Breaking this bond wouldn't just be emotionally difficult for him, it could cause physical distress." Jiu put her head in her hands. "I had no idea a simple act of friendship could cause so much trouble." "The Viridian delegation arrives tomorrow," Dr. Hana said gently. "The captain wants to know your decision." "What decision?" "I can't marry someone I just met, especially not someone from another species." "No one expects that," Dr. Hana assured her, "but we need to find a solution that respects Viridian culture while protecting your autonomy." After Dr. Hana left, Jiu could not sleep. She went to the ship's garden, finding comfort among the plants from Earth. To her surprise, Tarek was there. studying a flowering plant with fascination. "Tarek," she said softly, "we need to talk about tomorrow." He turned, his amber eyes reflecting the gentle lighting. "I understand this bond was not your intention," he said, surprising her. "On Viridia, intention matters greatly." "Then you understand I can't fulfill this bond the way your culture expects." Tarek nodded slowly. "I have been learning about human customs. Your species forms many types of bonds, not just mating pairs. Perhaps we can find a path that honors both our worlds." For the first time since the misunderstanding began, Jiu felt a glimmer of hope. "What did you have in mind?" "I do not know yet," Tarek admitted. "But I value the connection we have formed, even if it is not what my people expect. Together, perhaps we can create something new, a bridge between our cultures." As they sat together among Earth's plants, discussing possibilities for tomorrow's meeting, Jiu realized that this cultural misunderstanding might become something valuable after all, the beginning of true understanding between two very different worlds. The Viridian delegation arrived with formal ceremony. 3 representatives boarded the horizon, their scales shimmering with colors that seemed to indicate their ranks. Elder Niven led them, flanked by 2 younger Viridians who carried ornate cases. Captain Doyan welcomed them in the ship's conference room, which had been decorated with both Earth and Viridian symbols, based on Tarek's guidance. Jiu stood nervously beside Tarek, wearing her formal uniform. "We come to witness the bond between scientific explorer Tarek and Lieutenant Jiu Kim of Earth," Elder Niven announced, his translator conveying the formal tone. "This is the first interspecies bond in our recorded history." Jiu stepped forward. "Elder Niven, there has been a misunderstanding. On Earth, sharing food doesn't have the same meaning as on Viridia." The elder's scales darkened. "Are you rejecting the bond? This would bring great dishonor." Before tension could escalate, Tarek spoke. "Elder, I have been studying human culture. Their bonding customs are different but equally valid. I propose we use this situation to create a new type of bond, one that honors both traditions." The elder's head tilted, showing interest. "Explain." Dr. Chunho stepped forward with data displays showing both cultures. "We propose a cultural ambassador bond. Not a marriage as either of our species understands it, but a formal connection that builds understanding between our worlds." Over the next few hours, both sides discussed this new concept. The Viridian delegates initially resisted but became intrigued by the possibility of creating something unprecedented. By evening, they agreed to stay aboard the Horizon for 1 week to observe and consider this proposal. During this week, the Horizon became a place of cultural exchange. The crew organized events to share Earth customs, while the Viridians demonstrated their traditions. Jiu and Tarek led many of these exchanges, growing closer as they navigated between their 2 worlds. One evening, Jiu found Tarek in the observation lounge, staring at the stars. "Everything okay?" she asked, joining him. "I was thinking about purpose," he replied. "On Viridia, everyone has a clear role. Mine was to explore and gather knowledge. Isn't that still your purpose?" Tarek turned to her. "It has expanded. Now I find myself becoming a bridge between worlds. It is more than I expected." Over dinner with the Viridian delegation, Elder Niven observed the easy friendship that had developed between Jiu and Tarek. "Your species values choice in bonds," he noted to Captain Dodian. "This seems inefficient, but has interesting results. Humans believe that choosing our connections makes them stronger," the captain replied. "Yet you have wars, divisions," Elder Niven countered. "As do Viridians, I suspect," Dr. Juno said politely. "No species is perfect." The elder conceded this point with a gesture that Tarek had taught them meant respectful agreement. On the 5th day of the Viridian visit, alarms blared throughout the ship. Jiu was showing the delegates the botany lab when emergency lights flashed red. "All personnel to emergency stations," the ship's AI announced. "Critical failure in the life support system. Oxygen levels dropping in sections 3 through 7. Jiu's communicator beeped, Lieutenant Kim, Captain Do-hyun's voice came through. "We need you in engineering immediately." "I must go," she told the delegates who were looking alarmed. "Please return to your quarters for safety." "I will come with you," Tarek insisted. "My knowledge of environmental systems may help." They rushed to engineering, where chaos reigned. Chief Engineer Wubin was frantically working at a control panel while warning indicators flashed across screens. "The main oxygen recyclers are failing," Wubin explained as they arrived. "We've lost 3 backup systems already. We have maybe 2 hours before critical levels ship-wide." Jiu immediately joined a team trying to reroute life support through secondary systems, but progress was slow. "The recyclers' neural networks are rejecting new programming," she explained to Tarek, who watched over her shoulder. "It's like they're fighting our fixes." Tarek's eyes widened. "Show me the network pattern." When Jiu pulled up the diagnostic display, he made a surprised clicking sound. "This resembles a Viridian defense pattern, a protective algorithm." "Why would our systems have Viridian programming?" Jiu asked, confused. "They wouldn't, but the pattern is similar. On our ships, life support systems protect themselves against tampering." Tarek studied the readouts. "Your system isn't failing. It's defending against what it perceives as an attack." Captain Do-hyun joined them. "Can you fix it?" "Not with your methods," Tarek said. "But perhaps." He turned to Elder Nevin, who had followed despite instructions to remain in quarters. "Elder, this resembles the Varix protocol from our historical archives." The Elder examined the displays. Indeed, an ancient protection system, rarely seen in modern vessels. He turned to Tarek. "You propose to use the calming sequence. It may work on their system if we adapt it." Tarek nodded. With permission from Captain Do-hyun, Tarek and Elder Nevin began working alongside the human engineers. They introduced a pattern of code that didn't try to override the system, but instead communicated with it, gradually convincing it to accept changes. "It's like they're talking to the computer instead of commanding it," Wubin remarked as oxygen levels slowly stabilized. 3 hours later, life support was fully functional again. The engineering team discovered that a recent update had accidentally triggered a dormant security protocol in the ship's original programming, one that resembled Viridian systems by coincidence. In the aftermath, the mood between humans and Viridians changed noticeably. Where there had been polite interest, now there was genuine respect. At a special dinner to thank the Viridians for their help, Elder Nevin made an announcement. "We came here to witness a bond created by misunderstanding," he said, looking at Jiu and Tarek. "Instead, we have witnessed a more meaningful connection form, one based on cooperative effort and shared purpose." He lifted a small cup of water in a formal gesture. "The Council recognizes the value of this new type of bond. We approve the creation of a cultural ambassador status for Tarek and Lieutenant Kim." Captain Do-hyun raised his own cup. "The Earth Alliance welcomes this new connection between our peoples." Later that night, Jiu and Tarek stood again at the observation window, watching stars streak by. "What happens now?" Jiu asked. "Now we truly begin to learn from each other," Tarek replied. "Your people solve technical problems our science has struggled with. My people have knowledge that could benefit Earth." Jiu smiled. "All because I shared my pudding." Tarek made the soft clicking sound she now recognized as laughter. Perhaps misunderstandings sometimes lead to greater understanding. As they stood watching the stars, Elder Nevin observed them from the doorway, then turned away satisfied. This unexpected bond might not follow Viridian tradition, but it had already proved its value. Sometimes, he reflected, accidents create opportunities that careful planning never could. The Viridian delegation had been aboard the Horizon for 2 weeks. What had begun as a diplomatic incident had evolved into something unprecedented, the first formal cultural exchange between humans and Viridians. But as the 3rd week began, a new tension emerged. "The High Council is growing impatient," Elder Nevin told Captain Do-hyun during their morning meeting. "They accept the concept of cultural ambassadors, but insists that some form of formal bond ceremony must take place. Jiu sat quietly beside Tarek, who had become noticeably anxious. His scales had taken on a duller hue over the past few days. "Why does a ceremony matter so much if we've agreed on the nature of the relationship?" Captain Doyan asked. Elder Niven's translator conveyed his sigh. "In Viridian culture, ceremony is not symbolic. It is binding. Without it, the relationship has no official status." After the meeting, Jiu found Tarek in the ship's garden, a place he often went when troubled. He was studying a flowering plant, gently touching its petals. "Are you okay?" she asked, sitting beside him on the bench. "I am concerned," he admitted. "My people are traditional. They cannot understand relationships without clear definitions and boundaries." Jiu nodded. "Humans can be the same way sometimes." She hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind. "Tarek, what would this ceremony involve?" Tarek's scales brightened slightly. "Typically, a bonding ceremony includes the exchange of promises, the joining of hands, and the Feast of Union. But since this is not a traditional bond, adaptations would be appropriate." Later that day, Dr. Jonot called Jiu to his office where he showed her holographic images of Viridian ceremonies. "I've been researching their bonding rituals," he explained. "They're actually quite beautiful. The exchange of promises isn't unlike human wedding vows. Each person declares what they will contribute to the relationship." Jiu watched as holographic Viridians performed elaborate rituals. "And they expect me to do this with Tarek?" "In some form, yes." Dr. Jonot switched off the display. "But here's what's interesting. Tarek has been working with Elder Niven to create a modified ceremony. He's trying to make this comfortable for you." That evening, during dinner in the officers' mess, Captain Doyan joined Jiu at her table. "I've been thinking about this situation," he said without preamble. "This could be a significant opportunity for humanity. The Viridians have technology and scientific knowledge we could benefit from." Jiu put down her fork. "Sir, are you suggesting I go through with this ceremony for diplomatic reasons?" The captain looked uncomfortable. "I'm not ordering you to do anything, Lieutenant, but I want you to consider the bigger picture. This isn't just about you and Tarek anymore." After dinner, Jiu went to the observation deck to think. The stars streaked by in ribbons of light as the ship moved through space. She was surprised when Elder Niven joined her. "Your stars are different from ours," he said, standing beside her. "Yet they follow the same physical laws." "I suppose some things are universal," Jiu replied. The elder turned to face her. "Lieutenant Kim, may I speak frankly about Tarek?" "Of course." "Tarek is not just any scientist. He comes from an honored lineage of explorers. His great ancestor was the first Viridian to suggest that other intelligent life might exist beyond our world." Jiu was surprised. "I didn't know that. There is much you don't know about him, just as there is much he doesn't know about you." The elder's scales shifted to a gentle blue. "That is the nature of new connections. Elder Niven, why is this ceremony so important? If we're going to be cultural ambassadors, not mates, then why does it matter?" The elder was quiet for a moment. "Tarek's mission was not random exploration. Our world faces a crisis." "What kind of crisis?" "Resource depletion. Our star is changing, affecting our planet's climate. Crop failures have begun. Tarek was searching for other civilizations that might have faced similar challenges." Jiu felt a chill. "And that's why he was so far from home." "Yes, he took great risk to find help for our people." Elder Niven's voice grew solemn. "The High Council believed it was a foolish mission. Now that he has succeeded in finding your species, they must acknowledge his achievement. This ceremony would confirm that his discovery has value." The next morning, Jiu requested a private meeting with Tarek. They met in a small conference room where she had arranged for tea, a human custom he had come to enjoy. "Tarek, why didn't you tell me about Viridia's climate crisis?" He looked down at his tea. "I did not wish to influence your decision with our need. A bond formed from obligation is not true connection. But that's why you were out there alone in space, looking for help. Yes, our scientists predict we have perhaps 20 years before widespread famine begins. I believe that other species might have developed solutions we had not considered. Jiu thought about Earth's own history of climate challenges. We've faced similar problems. There might be technologies we could share. Tarek's scales brightened. That would be more than I hoped for. But I need to understand something first, Jiu said. This ceremony, what exactly would it mean for us? What would be expected afterward? As cultural ambassadors, we would be expected to facilitate exchange between our worlds. You would be welcomed on Viridia, and I would continue learning about Earth. Tarek hesitated. There would be no expectation of physical bonding. Jiu felt her face warm at the directness. And if I wanted to someday bond with someone else, a human, the ambassador status would allow for that possibility. It is a new category of relationship, one that honors our connection without the exclusivity of traditional bonds. Later that day, Jiu met with Captain Doyen, Dr. Hana, and Dr. Junho to discuss what she had learned. If we help them with their climate crisis, they're willing to share their faster-than-light technology, she explained. This could advance Earth science by decades. Captain Doyen looked impressed, and all it would take is this ceremony. The ceremony would formalize Tarek's status and open diplomatic channels, Dr. Junho explained. But Lieutenant Kim needs to make this choice freely. I've been thinking about it, Jiu said slowly. When I first shared my dessert with Tarek, it was a simple act of friendship. I had no idea it would lead to this. She smiled slightly. But now that I know him better, I find I actually want to help his people. Not out of obligation, but because it's the right thing to do. She looked around at her colleagues. I've decided to go through with the ceremony, but I want to incorporate human elements too. If we're creating something new between our species, it should reflect both worlds. That evening, Jiu found Tarek in the garden again. This time, he was placing something in the soil beside a flowering plant. "What are you doing?" she asked. He stood up, looking almost embarrassed. On Viridia, before making a formal proposal, one plants a seedling to represent hope for the future. He gestured to the tiny plant he had just placed in the soil. I asked the botanist for permission. Jiu felt unexpectedly touched by the gesture. Is this your way of properly proposing our ambassador bond? Tarek's scales shifted to a warm gold. Yes, not as accident or obligation, but as choice. She knelt down beside the small plant and added a little water from a nearby container. Then my answer is yes. The day of the ceremony arrived with a buzz of excitement throughout the horizon. Crew members who weren't on essential duty gathered in the ship's largest space, the cargo bay, transformed for the occasion with plants from the botany lab and decorations that blended human and Viridian aesthetics. Jiu stood in her quarters, looking at herself in the mirror. She wore her formal Earth Alliance uniform, with a sash of iridescent material given to her by the Viridians. Dr. Hana had helped her attach small decorative clips in her hair, made from materials that changed color to match her emotions. A Viridian tradition. "Are you ready?" Dr. Hana asked, adjusting the sash one final time. "I think so," Jiu replied. It's strange. A month ago, I had never met a Viridian. Now I'm creating a diplomatic bond with one. Life on a starship is never predictable, Dr. Hana said with a smile. But I've watched you and Tarek together. There's genuine respect there. That's a good foundation for any relationship. When Jiu entered the cargo bay, she was surprised by how beautiful it looked. Soft lights created patterns on the ceiling that resembled both Earth constellations and Viridian star maps. In the center stood Tarek, wearing formal Viridian attire, a close-fitting garment with layers that emphasized his scales' natural patterns. Captain Doyen stood on one side, representing Earth, while Elder Nevin stood on the other, representing Viridia. The crew and Viridian delegation formed a circle around them. "We gather to witness something unprecedented," Captain Doyen began. Not just a connection between two individuals, but a bridge between two worlds. Elder Niven continued. From misunderstanding comes new understanding. From accident comes purpose. Tarek stepped forward to meet Jiu in the center. His scales were the brightest gold she had ever seen them, a sign of joy and honor in Viridian culture, he had told her. In Viridian tradition, we begin with the exchange of promises, Elder Niven announced. Each declares what they will bring to this bond. Tarek spoke first, his voice clear. I, Tarek of Viridia, promise to share knowledge with respect and honesty. I promise to build understanding between our peoples. I promise to honor both cultures equally in my words and actions. He then added something they had discussed privately. I promise friendship without obligation, connection without constraint. Jiu smiled at the addition before speaking her own promises. I, Jiu Kim of Earth, promise to help create understanding between our worlds. I promise to respect Viridian traditions while sharing human perspectives. I promise to work towards solutions that benefit both our peoples. She added her own personal touch. I promise patience when we misunderstand each other, and celebration when we find common ground. The next part combined traditions. From humans came the clasping of hands, Jiu's 5 fingers interlacing with Tarek's 4, while from Viridians came the breath of trust, where they leaned forward until their foreheads nearly touched, sharing the same air. By the customs of Earth, Captain Doyen said, we recognize this bond of friendship and cooperation. By the laws of Viridia, Elder Niven added, we recognize this bond of mutual support and shared purpose. Together they announced, we declare Tarek of Viridia and Lieutenant Jiu Kim the first cultural ambassadors between our worlds. The cargo bay filled with applause and the clicking sounds that represented Viridian approval. The ceremony transitioned to celebration as food from both cultures was shared. True to the origins of their unusual relationship, Jiu and Tarek formally exchanged small portions of their meals, now with full understanding of what the gesture meant to both of them. Later in the evening, as the celebration continued, Elder Niven approached them with unexpected news. The High Council has reviewed the data on Earth's climate restoration technologies, he said. They are prepared to establish a formal exchange program immediately. Captain Doyen, who had joined them, looked pleased. The Earth Alliance will be eager to discuss terms. We're particularly interested in your faster-than-light drive technology. There is one condition, Elder Niven said, his scales shifting to a more formal pattern. The High Council requests that Ambassador Tarek and Ambassador Kim visit Viridia to introduce Earth's representatives. Jiu felt a flutter of excitement. Visit your homeworld. It would be an honor to show you my home, Tarek said, his eyes bright. 2 months later, Jiu stood on the observation deck of a Viridian ship approaching the green-blue world of Viridia. Tarek stood beside her, pointing out continents and features as they came into view. That island chain is where I was hatched, he told her. And there, that is our capital city. Jiu marveled at the alien world that looked both strange and familiar. The oceans were bluer than Earth's, the land masses more purple than green, but the white clouds and polar caps reminded her of home. It's beautiful, she said honestly. I can see why you wanted to save it. Behind them, a team of Earth scientists prepared their presentations on climate stabilization technology. The Horizon had returned to Earth after the ceremony, bringing news of first contact and the remarkable diplomatic breakthrough. The Earth Alliance had quickly assembled a team of experts to begin the exchange program. Are you nervous? Tarek asked as they watched his homeworld grow larger in the viewport. A little, Jiu admitted. I'm the first human to visit your world. That's a big responsibility. You won't be alone, Tarek reminded her. And you already understand more about Viridians than any other human. As they prepared to enter orbit, Jiu reflected on the strange journey that had brought her here. A simple dessert shared in friendship had led to confusion, then understanding, and finally to this historic moment. The ship's captain announced they were beginning descent. Tarek turned to Jiu with an expression she had learned to read despite his alien features, a mixture of pride and nervousness. On Viridia, when someone returns from a long journey, their family greets them with a welcoming feast, he explained. My family has prepared such a feast for us, but I should warn you, they are very curious about the human who accidentally proposed to me. Jiu laughed. I'll answer all their questions. After all, that's what cultural ambassadors do, right? Indeed. Tarek's scales shimmered with amusement. And when we visit Earth next month, your family can ask me equally embarrassing questions. As the ship descended toward the landing area where a crowd of Viridians waited to witness this historic arrival, Jiu felt a sense of purpose stronger than any she had known before. The accidental proposal had become something far more meaningful, the beginning of friendship between worlds. That evening, at the welcoming feast with Tarek's family, Jiu performed the Viridian custom perfectly, taking the small portion from her plate and offering it to each family member in turn. This time, everyone understood exactly what the gesture meant. Not a proposal of marriage, but an offer of friendship, freely given and gladly received.